on tonight. Of course, our co-host, Bishop Andy C. Luter. We're going to turn it over to him. He's going to welcome us and do what he does.
Good evening, beloved. Bishop Andy C. Luter here of the Hollywood Full Gospel Baptist Cathedral, located at 3504 Great Neck Road in the Hampton. In your background, and tell us a bit of your origin and your roots.
Okay, that's an easy question. I guess a good way to start. I have been on the town board 2.5 years. I'm in my first full 4-year term. When I started this, I ran for an unexpired term, which was 1 year. So I ran, and then the following year I had to run again. So this is my first full 4-year term, and I'm in about 2.5 years. My background, you mentioned the military. I enlisted in the military when I was 20 years old as a private first class, and I've worked my way up. I am now a lieutenant colonel in the military. I've had 3 deployments: Desert Storm, Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, and this current campaign in Iraq that we're in. I was there during the ground invasion. So that's my military. Now my full-time position is in education.
Yes.
And right out of college, I started teaching in New York City. Once I moved out here, I was lucky enough, one of the lucky ones, to secure a position out here. And then after getting my guidance credentials, I went on to be a guidance counselor. So right now I work at Wilson Tech as a guidance counselor, and September will be my 22nd year in education. So I have 22 years in education, 24 years in the military, and 2.5 years
as counselor.
As a counselor person, yes.
You are a part of a collection of very strong African American women who serve us here on Long Island. Sister Goolsby in Hempstead, Sister Jackson in Huntington. There is Shirley E. Coverdale that is running for a seat on the town of Riverhead board. Met with her last night. Talk to us about how you see your role and how that role is distinguished from your colleagues and peers who serve in the same position that you do.
Well, we hate to separate, to separate people, but the reality is that our community has different issues at times.
Sure.
Or we approach issues from a different perspective. In fairness to some people, there's no point of reference, which is the term I like to use. So therefore, I think that one of my roles is to become that point of reference. Not that, I haven't had every experience that an African American has had, but I've had some, and I've witnessed some. So therefore, sometimes when you bring it from a different perspective, then it kind of makes sense.
Okay, all right.
And if you don't have a point of reference, then you don't really, you don't really need to think about why someone does it this way or that way. So I think one of my real responsibilities is to help maintain that point of reference when it comes to certain issues.
I'm going to yield to Bishop so that she can ask a question or two. I do have a question that is somewhat spontaneous, because I heard you mention as part of your introduction that you were in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba.
Correct.
And so I'm real anxious to get your read and your perspective on the president's initiative and his interest in closing that as it relates to our image around the world.
Well, I think part of his reasoning for closing it is part of the reason for our former president having those detainees go to Guantanamo Bay.
Okay.
Guantanamo Bay is a unique landmass in that it is not a part of the United States property. So therefore, the detainees that are on Guantanamo Bay does not have to fall under Geneva Convention.
Okay.
Now, we do try to maintain the Geneva Convention Code,
All right.
but we don't have to. So therefore, because it does not fall under, it's not a U.S. property, and there is no declared war there.
Okay, excellent. Okay.
So that's kind of the blanket that covers it. So I believe that the former president chose Guantanamo Bay to give some elbow room and some leeway possibly.
All right, okay.
And I believe that's why the current president, President Obama wants to close it because some people feel that the detainees are there and they're not getting due process.
Rule of law. Yeah.
Right.
And that they don't get the benefit of rule of law.
Exactly.
Amen.
Sure.
Well, I'm just impressed. I thought we were going to just really tap into the councilwoman, town of Babylon, and then you come to the table and you bring so much, and it is almost where we've been taught, and I'm probably a victim of it time and time again, when we judge a book by its cover, or we read the title of a book and we just assume what it's going to be. I want to reference back to what you were talking about with regards to when Bishop brought up the other councilwomen, and you talked about referencing. How hard is it for you to remain focused on that alone? Because this is what I've learned, the difference in leadership with women, Bishop, is that we wear a lot of hats. And so sometimes, and I think you and I were conversating, we were saying, Bishop, we were talking about you before you came in.
I hope it was good.
Always. We said that your voice is so deep and that your voice requires the attention of people, demands the attention of people. And I say all the time, I can't imagine what it was like when he woke up one morning and came out and said good morning to his mother. And so we were saying to be parents or something that, so we wear different hats. And so how hard has it been for you to remain focused? Now you're still serving, you're a councilwoman, you're a guidance counselor, and so you have to, I'm sure there's a mother, right. And so you have to stay focused on the referencing, you have to stay focused. I'm sure there's one core or one key thing that you do, but how hard is it to remain focused on these things?
Well, believe it or not, although all those things that I do seem so different, they're really very much alike. It's all serving. I'm serving my children, I'm serving my school, I'm serving my country, I'm serving my local community, and it's all serving, which is in my grain. It's what I do. I'm always trying to help. I'm always, offering a hand, offering advice, offering a resource, an avenue for people. So it's just, now I do it all the time.
Yes.
I don't have any days off, but that's okay, because it's really, when I put my head down at night, I sleep really well, and I'm satisfied with what I try to accomplish each day.
Amen. That was my question. I totally agree. I absolutely totally agree that we can do all things, and we can do it through serving. If you have the mentality that this is what serving, if you look at everything that you do as servitude, then it shifts the paradigm, it shifts everything, and you can go to sleep at night and sleep well. Thank you for answering my question.
Sister Gordon, in talking about serving, undeniably we're in a recession. And of course, members of the religious community, part of what we encourage people is to not be overtaken by the reality of the recession. As a member of a governmental structure, what kind of response and remedies does the town of Babylon intend to offer for those of us who are caught in the throes of this economic recession?
Well, we too at the town of Babylon and, in the policy-making arena are in the same throes. But we try. As you know, as you're well aware, we have held the line on taxes for several years. This year, because of the recession, we had to raise taxes, which amounted to, I think, $26 and change per household. So we try to make sure that, although we have to raise it, we try to limit how much we raise it because we know it's hard for everyone. We also just recently was able to get legislation passed that allowed our firefighters and our emergency workers to tap into the group health insurance plan through the town. So that will help them be able to afford health care for their families at a reduced rate. They pay the way we pay. What other things are we doing with the recession? We are not hiring any other full-time folks. Those people who are retiring, we are able to, although it's a little taxing on the other folks in the office, but we try to absorb that workload so that we don't have to hire any additional people. So these are some of the ways we're trying to cut governmental costs in the town, which will, the results of that will turn over to our constituents.